Here's your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, the Franchise Guide.
What are the 5 tips to avoid hidden costs that could sink your franchise? And some of these we'll talk about in detail, but it's really just being aware, understanding kind of where the numbers fall into play and where to find them. Number one is when you start engaging and talking with a franchise company, I always recommend figuring out if the model is a good fit, if they have availability before diving into their franchise disclosure document. We're going to call it an FDD, refer to an FDD going forward. By the way, the franchise agreement is within the FDD. I wouldn't advise just reading those all day long. I would advise on figuring out an ideal business model, seeing what franchises match that model, and then start digging into FDDs. These are 2, 3, 4. I've seen them much greater depending on the amount of information that's included. 400 plus pages, legal document, same items. You have more detail than others in certain areas. But at the end of the day, figuring out the franchises and the models before diving in, because if it's not a good fit, not saying you can't read the FDD, but figuring out if it's a good fit before spending hours reading that document. So you get the FDD. That's going to list, I believe it's 23 items up front. It's going to give you an overview, legal, if there have been any lawsuits on both ends, franchise or franchisee. At the very end, there's going to be a P&L, there's going to be the franchise agreement. And within these 23 items, you'll have a section, item 5, which is initial fees, item 6, other fees. And then item 7, we're going to stick to these 3, estimated initial investment. So these are essentially going to item 7. The initial investment is a range. In that range, it's usually all costs involved between the franchise fee and everything you needed to get the business up and running. I would say usually it may cover 90 days. So the first 3 months of operation. So you'll have 3 months marketing, 3 months payroll, 3 months working capital, but always refer, it should tell you in the FDD, but always ask the franchisor to confirm. The item 6 and item 5 are also going to cover all the other fees. So you'll see things like, what's the transfer fee if I were to sell my franchise, if any? Royalties, are they fixed? Is it a percentage of revenue, which is typically what you'll see? Some have a scaling royalty where it decreases after a certain length of time. Getting crystal clear on what the initial investment, outlining that, what the costs are, that's going to be crucial. Now, with that being said, you want to create a pro forma, and that pro forma is going to really list out, you can put in hypothetical revenues, and then you're going to go down the list as far as all the expenses you can incur in that business. This is not in stone. This is something that you can change. You can do, like with the initial investment, you'll have a low end and a high end. Why? Because everyone's situation is different. It depends on if you're going to be full-time or hire a general manager. That additional employee, that general manager, if you're paying them, we'll say $60,000 a year, well, that's $5,000 a month. So that's an extra of just say $15,000 plus additional payroll costs, insurance and everything else. Call it $20,000 into your initial investment. So that can swing it from $100,000 to $120,000 investment. Bigger investment, when you go to funding, you want to make sure that's being tackled and covered. That's why you'll get those investment ranges. Will you be purchasing the vehicle or leasing the vehicle? Will that vehicle be used, or will that vehicle be, is that vehicle new? How aggressive are you going to go with the marketing? What are you paying your staff? Are you going to pay your general manager a lower cost and give them upside via phantom equity, maybe a percentage of the profits, which, not underlying equity, but essentially kind of a profit sharing plan, maybe giving them a lower salary, but then taking care of them on the profitability of the business. Those are things to consider. So laying all that out and understanding that these expenses could vary, which we're going to talk about here. So that's kind of where to find the information.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to learn how to make the transition from corporate to owning your franchise, join Giuseppe on the next episode. You can also follow on all social media platforms and achieve financial and time freedom today.